Welcome everybody. It's Hogvillenet YouTube Live. We do this after every Razorback game, win or lose. It's always better when the Hogs win because that's what you're tuning in to talk about. Hopefully, not a lot to complain about tonight. Arkansas now back-to-back wins in SEC play after starting 1-5, the worst start in 14 years. Ole Miss and LSU, we know these are bottom dwellers, but so is Arkansas. You got to win these games to separate yourself, especially at home. Two back-to-back wins, but both by double-digit margins. Arkansas jumped all over LSU. It was fairly close early because LSU was living at the free throw line, kind of hung in there 15-11, and then Arkansas just blasted off. Ended up finishing the half with a 23-3 run to go up 38-14 at the break. LSU put a scare in the Hogs early in the second half. Had a nice run there. Ended up whittling it down to an 11-point deficit, and then Arkansas just hit the gas again, and really, put this thing away. 60-40 is the final score. Arkansas improves now to 14-6 overall, 3-5 in SEC play. Arkansas is about to step out this weekend for what I think is just house money, going to play at a ranked Baylor team that just knocked off Kansas last night. You're on the road in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. It's the last one. But this is a big opportunity for Arkansas because if you win that game, it's glorious on your resume, and you've got a 3-game winning streak at that point. If you lose it, it's not going to hurt you. It doesn't hurt you whatsoever because it's also not a league game. And Arkansas gets back home midweek next week to play Texas A&M, an Aggie team that's been really good in SEC play. Certainly, talent-wise, Arkansas's got the advantage there. Arkansas could pick up its third consecutive league win regardless of what happens at Baylor. But I mentioned Arkansas with back-to-back SEC wins. It's a 2-game winning streak. They haven't had one of those in over a month. You have to go back to Bradley in North Carolina, Asheville. Arkansas mentioned the double-digit margin wins back-to-back games. 20-point win tonight was their first 20 points or more win since Asheville, when they won that by 34. You expect that. And Arkansas's taking care of home court. Only one loss on the year. That was Alabama. We know that. The Razorbacks, can't get that one back. They had a chance late in that game and had some defensive lapses, and Bama went on a run. And we know the 4 losses, 3 of those were by double-digit margins. So you want to see not only that you're winning against teams like at home, against teams like Ole Miss and LSU, but that you make statements in those games. You don't want to be battling and grinding to the very end trying to eke out a victory. So I thought a lot of things. Arkansas, this was my headline in my tweet when I tweeted out my article. I said pretty in pink, playing off the old movie. But the point was, other than that early stretch and that stretch early in the second half where things got a little shaky, for the most part, Arkansas was dominant at both ends of the floor. Arkansas started, the last time Arkansas played LSU was the SEC opener back in late December. The Hogs go on the road and take 25 three-pointers. Tonight, they cut that down almost in half, 13. And it seemed like a lot there for a little bit. Arkansas started 4-4 from 3. Devo Davis knocked down a couple in there. Anthony Black did. But what happened was Arkansas was really put a focus on getting to the rim. And I thought there were some interesting things about this Razorback team tonight offensively that stood out to me. For Devo Davis, it's interesting. I've been talking for the last several days. I wrote an article about Devo Davis having a front row seat for Arkansas turnarounds the last 2 years. And he was actually interjected into those turnarounds in terms of the player rotation tweaks in each year. He was a part of that. But he was also part of some outstanding play to help Arkansas, not only the rotation tweaks themselves, but things he was doing on the court to help Arkansas. And I thought the reason I wrote about him when I started going through some of the stuff this week in my feature story at hogville.net, I started with him, and probably 2/3 of my story was about Devo, and then I got into guys like Pinion and some of the frontline options and some other stuff that was starting to look like it was turning around. But really, I thought Devo the last 4 games, when I looked at him, 17 points a game, nearly 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and he was shooting the ball better. If you notice, and I've talked about this, I talked about it on here after the game the other day against Ole Miss, when he went 3 of 5 from 3, he looks a little bit more patient and settled in getting into his shot. Not as many rushed or off balance where he's kind of not sure what he wants to do and then he goes ahead and hoists one. They look purposeful right now. He's getting his feet set. He's being a little just deliberate enough, not taking too much time with it because you could talk yourself into missing it, but he's shooting it with confidence. I thought his drive game for back-to-back games was excellent. He had a couple of early turnovers early in the second half, in that stretch there, and some defensive lapses. But I mean, you talk about a guy that's a lockdown defender, and he draws the other team's gun and holds him scoreless in the first half. Now Miller had a good start to that second half. He was a big part of that, but he ends up with only 9 points. LSU 40 points tonight, no double-figure scores, 3 of 12 shooting for Miller, 9 points. The big man Williams, they're basically at Murray State last year. He was the Ohio Valley Conference Player of the Year. But he's a good player even at this level. But Arkansas held him to 2 of 10 field goals, only 9 points. He did have 11 rebounds, but no double-double for the big man. And then you look across Arkansas's balance scoring, only 60 points, but 4 players in double figures that did most of the offensive production. But I thought it was all hands on deck defensively. I thought we mentioned, Jalen Graham did some good things to help Arkansas in this game coming off the bench. Playing above the rim. Mekhi Mitchell got to play above the rim tonight on some lob passes. I think Arkansas continues to find ways. Ricky Council IV, I'm going to talk about him for just a little bit too, because I thought there's some interesting dynamic to his offense tonight. Not a big game for him scoring wise. I think he finished with 10 points, but he did have 7 assists in this game, a game high, 6 big rebounds, and he had a steal. But what I thought was interesting about Ricky Council, he's really been playing a lot of one-on-one basketball all season. It worked a lot better in the non-conference against some of those teams. Not as much in the SEC. Been up and down, hit and miss with that roller coaster going one-on-one with the crossover. Tonight he was doing a lot of pump fakes and ball fakes from 3. And I thought that was a little bit better way for him to set guys up because it froze defenders. And he's got such a quick first step. And guys were playing off of him previously when he was working on his crossover and trying to set it up that way. That's one-on-one basketball. I thought the ball fakes were a lot more effective to keep a guy a little closer on him in his first step, so it helped him get an edge sometimes on his drives. He hit a couple of mid-range shots, got to the basket. He had probably some bad decisions trying to get to the basket, but you're going to live with some of that, especially with the balance on offense that he gave you with all those assists. We saw Ricky do some of that earlier in the year, not as much lately. So you want to see him, you want to see some of that creativity because I felt like Ricky's been really a one-dimensional player on offense. Again, one-on-one, setting guys up with crossover dribbles. That's great on the playground. At this level, it's really hard to do. Because he doesn't get, he's not a catch and shoot guy really, and you don't see him getting offense off cuts and different things. It's really, he's really got to create a lot off the bounce. So I think there's some maturation and a little bit of the nuance we saw for him tonight. Anthony Black, 5 of 6, not a great shooting night for him. His little runners and floaters weren't quite there, but he got to the free throw line, and he did a good job passing the basketball as well as Devo Davis tonight. And again, we go back to Mekhi Mitchell and Jalen Graham with Mekhi Mitchell out hurt. Kamani Johnson, again, I think, maybe got an offensive rebound or two, had a couple of moments, but really, other than some fouls, productivity with him has not been where it has been at times. It's never going to be a lot of productivity with Kamani, but it's probably less right now in this stretch of games. So with the thinner front line now, we know Brazil's not coming back, has been out all of SEC play, and then Mikal out for a stretch. It was good to see Jalen Graham step up and support Mekhi Mitchell. And for Mekhi, 10 points, 4 of 6 from the field, 2 of 2 at the line, 8 big rebounds, 3 big block shots. I thought he, probably missed some opportunities to finish around the basket in this game, kind of hesitating when he got some good passes and kind of gave up on a clean look and let defenders close on him. But look, that's a little bit nitpicky. Arkansas, to me, this was their best first half of basketball, obviously in league play. They had a great second half against Missouri at home when they came back from 17 down to win that game. This was their best half of basketball in the first half in league play, arguably the best half of the season. Is you can make that case because they did very little wrong in that first half. I mean, you go on a 23-3 run to finish out the half. You're up 24 points and you had LSU to 14 points. 3 of 25 field goals in the first half. I mean, Arkansas was +5 in turnovers, but +14 in points off turnovers in that first half. Arkansas struggled with turnovers in the second half. It ended up being only a +3 margin at 15-12. But the points off turnovers remained at a +14 margin. They finished 18-4. I thought Arkansas too has been not a good team this year in transition. Not a good team. And we saw a couple of early Arkansas should have scored in transition. AB lost it out of bounds. But as the first half started moving a little bit more, I thought Arkansas had its best transition look in that first half than it's had probably all season long. I might be forgetting a stretch where it was better, but it's certainly recently Arkansas's transition, and they ended up 15-7, so +8 in transition scoring. Even in the game against Ole Miss, they were -5 in transition. So tonight they were better, and we saw Arkansas getting some easy above the rim stuff off of lobs and just playing some misdirection on that two-man game. I mean, Arkansas's guards, didn't always move to the guy they were throwing it to. They were moving away or east and west, and guys rolling and getting behind the defense. And so you want to see more and more of that nuance. This was a game where LSU mixed up man and zone. The previous game, we know the zone was a killer. This time they mixed things up. And I thought, Joseph Pinion got some opportunities tonight. Got a couple of shots up. It wasn't his night to knock some down. I thought Jalen Graham was kind of that guy off the bench tonight. Really, he did some stuff. He had 2 or 3 good defensive possessions. He got some looks around the basket and didn't finish some of those, but he did finish at the rim. And I thought that was big for Arkansas because Arkansas doesn't have to be great on its front line, but I keep saying it's by committee. You need production, but aside from the production, you need positive impact at both ends. And so that it's not a blind spot on your team at either end of the floor. And for the most part this season, when Arkansas has been shorthanded since Brazil's been out, for the most part, it's been up and down. And I think the last couple of games, it's picked up just a little bit more consistency there. And again, let's go back and acknowledge the fact that Ole Miss and LSU are not very good. These are 2 of the worst teams in the SEC. Arkansas is kind of separating itself a little bit right now, trying to get to the middle of the pack, which it can do to close out the first half of league play, which will be next week against Texas A&M. If Arkansas wins that game at home, its 3rd straight game at Bud Walton Arena, after starting 4 games on the road out of the first 6 in league play, then they can get to 4-5 as they make the turn to the second half of the league play. Boy, wouldn't you love it, Hog fans, if Arkansas can tuck in a win at Baylor in that SEC Big 12 Challenge. That would be huge for this team. Would look great on the resume. And Arkansas right now, is kind of middling in the NCAA tournament bid projections, the bracketology, 7 to 8 seed. The dreaded 8-9 matchup to play a 1 seed probably in the second round of the tournament. 7 seed and below is where you want to be, because those are typically you see more, even when some of the seed results are upsets. They're not necessarily really upsets when you see the teams match up. A lot harder to do as an 8 or a 9 because the ones are typically always so tough. So that, Arkansas, we're so far away from those things really shaking out. But right now, if this is the bottom for Arkansas for a while and they can build it back up, that's great because that's where, like I said, 7 or higher. Obviously, you want to be higher than 7, but if you can get there or better, that's great. And again, it's a long way to go. We still don't know what's going to happen with Nick Smith Jr. We've talked so much about how long he's going to be out. Now the question is, does he get back? And if so, when is that? We know that there are 10 games. Well, I keep saying 10 games. At the end of January, when you start into February and early March, there's actually 9 SEC games left. Plus, you get at least 1 to start the SEC tournament. Everybody's guaranteed that. So there's 10 more to go at minimum. Once you get on the other side of January. So we'll see where it lands with Nick Smith Jr. Again, I thought Arkansas tonight looked like the team that I keep saying is a tournament team, even if they don't get anybody back. I keep saying that, and tonight they looked like that, even though, again, this wasn't a great LSU. Some of Arkansas's problems, we talked so much about, are self-inflicted wounds. And we saw that happen early in that second half. We saw in bunches. All right, so Arkansas didn't put together a perfect game, but they were much better whistle to whistle, horn to horn, end to end than they've been in a while, including the Ole Miss game. I thought Arkansas tonight gave the kind of performance and the kind of game that gives you, some faith that when they play teams they should beat, that they can have nights similar to this, even if they're not as good in either half going forward as they were in that first half. As long as they're better, they can have outcomes against some of the middling, lower tier teams in this league to help elevate. We know the toughest stretch still remains. I talked about the 4 of 6 start on the road in SEC play. You finish up 2 of your last 3 games before the SEC tournament, or Alabama, Tennessee on the road. You get Kentucky at home. That's typically a battle, no matter what the level of a Kentucky team is. Was 14 the lowest we've held any? Yeah, I don't remember a team scoring fewer than. There may have been a team Arkansas held in the teens before. I didn't look that up tonight. I should have done that, and I'll do it when I go finish my story. I've already got a game story up on Hogville.net. Please go to Hogville.net. I don't think Otis Kirk has stopped writing football stories, because there's something new every day. New player additions, coaching changes, all of it. You got Dudley Dawson helping out with football. He'll do an opposition story tonight. Looking at what the coach at LSU thought about this game. He'll have an article about that. He's doing a great job with women's basketball. And again, we do have a game. I have my game story up at Hogville.net, but we'll add Musselman quotes. I can't wait to hear what he had to say, and some more stuff I'll add in there. Council just isn't there offensively. He seems to be on a different page than everyone else. And I talked about that. I've talked about it. It's because he's been playing one-on-one basketball. And to be on the page with teammates, the ball can't stick. It's got to move. Sometimes you need to score off cuts. Make a great cut, catch it, and use that athleticism to get to the rim. Sometimes you need to minimize, less is more, get off the ball, move, and then maybe when you receive it, you can do something with it, because the defense is a little off balance. He tends to dribble to hit the first guy up, and then he's got 1 or 2 more coming to help. These teams scheme this, man. These coaches in this league and the talentless league are too good to think that that's going to carry the day. It did a lot in non-conference, because let's face it, a lot of the teams Arkansas played were mid-major teams that didn't have the physical and athletic talent that Arkansas is now seen in the SEC. But I did say that Ricky used that ball fake tonight. He used it a lot off the catch, and I thought that was a little bit better and a little different look for defenders to have to deal with than just trying to get into the crossover game, because you can just sit down on that. But a ball fake either freezes a guy or gets him to move towards you to close, and now you have a little bit more of an advantage to at least beat the first guy and then pick and choose. And we saw Ricky tonight get some assists, so I want to credit Ricky. 10 points and 7 assists. That's a pretty darn good offensive night. I thought he got fouled. I thought that was a flagrant one. The rule's clear. If you're held in transition, if a guy holds you and you're ahead, that should be a flagrant one if they don't make a play on the ball. That was pretty clear. Musselman nearly lost it, and the officials decided they were just going to stick with the common foul. It was only a 1-and-1 opportunity. Arkansas gets nothing out of it. Ricky missed the front end of that, but he's been really good at the free throw line for the most part. He did have a 2 of 2 trip to the line when LSU had that run going. Arkansas really couldn't get a bucket. But Ricky got a bucket, and he hit 2 free throws in that stretch to kind of keep Arkansas in that double-digit lead before they expanded it again. Why wasn't a F1 called on LSU? Great question. It should have been. I guess the officials pretended like they didn't see him, the LSU defender, hold Ricky up, because he didn't make a play on the ball, and he didn't reach and slap down like he was trying to get to the ball. He just grabbed him. That should have been a flagrant one, So I don't know if I don't know what their full process is. Are they conferring with the SEC office? It seems like these guys don't get it right most of the time, and it's hurt Arkansas. It hurt Arkansas badly in that Missouri game on the road. Arkansas right now could be in a 3-game winning streak when you think about it that way. 2 10-point leads in the second half at Vandy and Missouri. We saw what Vandy did. I thought Arkansas got hosed at Missouri. I mean, crying over spilled milk. Let's leave it alone. It was obvious. Good to see Devo stepping up. He's been playing like we thought he would. Look, 16 points tonight, 7 of 8 from the field, and that included 2 of 2 from 3. In his last 2 games, he's 5 of 7 from 3. Again, that story I put out, I wrote about all of his percentages. I think he was 8 of 18. So you add on 2 of 2 to that. So he's shooting 50% in the last 5 games from 3. Who saw that coming? And if you looked at the start of this game, I thought he was the catalyst. He got Arkansas off to a great start. Not only was he knocking down shots, Arkansas went up 15-11. He had 7 of those points. 3 of 3 from the field at that point, 1-3. But he had a couple of steals, deflections, and they counted steals for him, even though another teammate recovered it. But those were big, coming on the blind side of LSU's offensive players and poking the ball away. Those are the kind of Devo plays I remember him really sparking up as a freshman. And we've seen it throughout his career. But sometimes in games, no matter what his production is, there's, questionable decision-making on early shooting, ill-advised shots, some turnovers where he's trying to do a little too much sauce on it. But how about the sauce on that reverse pass driving to Anthony Black for that last triple that Arkansas did make? It's only 3 in the second half that it made. That was a thing of beauty. Black ran the baseline, made a tough pass to Devo on the opposite wing. Devo drives in and flips the ball back with, the no look, and AB knocks down the 3. That was a big deal. But Devo Davis, man, you look at his stat line, 2 steals now. Yeah, he had 2 turnovers early in the second half. But that was it. So he had a clean floor game for the most part when you really look at the full body of work. He played all 40 minutes. So you had 2 turnovers and maybe a minute or 2 to start that second half. Yeah, they weren't great. They were a little sloppy and nonchalant, it looked. I thought defensively he lost a step. I think everybody was a little bit too relaxed coming in with that 24-point lead after the break. But Arkansas righted the ship and swung it back the other way. Built that lead back to 20 plus, ends up winning by 20. We talk about AB. I think still with him, one of some of the things that stand out with me is some of the tougher things he does, like getting on the glass. He deals with a lot of physicality on his drives. They don't always call the foul tonight. When they did, he went to the line and knocked down most of them. I think he was 5 of 6. So, AB did some work in this game. And I go back to when I look at the rebounding and I look at the points in the paint, Arkansas's had some close, some thinner margins in those areas relative to what they did in non-conference. Tonight, +1 on the glass, +6 in points in the paint. But guess what? When you're holding the other team down for the game, 26, 27% shooting from the field and 1 of 9 from 3. Even though Arkansas started 4 of 4 from 3, they only finished 5 of 13, so they went 1 of their last 9 to match LSU's 1 for 9 for the game. But so what? Arkansas only took 13. They played to their strengths, and they knocked down enough of them. They won that battle, the 3-point battle, now 2 games in a row. Again, I'm going to use the disclaimer. It's LSU and it's Ole Miss, but still, you got to start somewhere. And Arkansas didn't look good playing on the road against LSU. Not just because they were on the road, because they decided to shoot 25 three-pointers that night. So sometimes it's about what you're doing, not necessarily the level of the competition and the choices you're making. And I thought Eric Melsman was awfully demonstrative tonight against this kind of opponent. And we've seen a lack of fire in him when you're in a losing streak. Obviously, he's not going to be on fire. But I think getting back on the winning side against Ole Miss, and then tonight, he wanted to see his team continue to snowball all the good stuff that was happening. So he was fired up. He was fiery throughout this game, and I thought that was good I actually think that was good for Arkansas. I thought he might get a technical there for a minute. Big deal if he did. I think I never really had a doubt that Arkansas was going to win this game. I did have some doubts about where that margin was going to land and were they going to have to, finish it up in the last 4 minutes. It wasn't like that. They were still up pretty big when it got down to those last few possessions after that final time, under 4-minute timeout. The Baylor's up next. I mean, this is 17th ranked team, just beat Kansas. We know when you talk about 5 stars at Arkansas, Keontae George, who's another lottery projection, big guard. He's trimmed down a little bit. So an NBA scout called me yesterday. We were talking about Anthony Black and Keontae George, scout that I talked to a while back when they were at the CP3 guard camp a few months ago. Several months ago, and back in the summer. And, those were his 2 favorite players there. And so we talked a little bit about that matchup coming out. That, there's going to be a lot more going on in that game than just those 2 guys. But these are the kind of everybody knows the last time these 2 teams met was in the Elite Eight 2 years ago. Arkansas loses that game. And Baylor goes on to have what I consider one of the more classic national championship runs. All national championships are valid; they're all great. But that looked like a team to me that could win in many different eras. The way that it could do, it could stretch the floor like any team, like a lot of the pro teams do now, but at a college level of quality, but still stretching the floor. But they could also be physical, and they dealt really well with diversity with a lot of different talented guards. And so that was a fun Baylor team to watch. I know it wasn't fun the night that Baylor knocked off Arkansas, but the Hogs gave Baylor in that NCAA tournament run one of Baylor, I think maybe Baylor's toughest game. The final margin wise it was, but I thought Arkansas, before JD Notae fell out, was right there and had a chance. So again, it's two different teams now. We know the turnover in college basketball is wild after every season, let alone 2 years. But still, it's a sexy matchup for Arkansas fans. It should be. Arkansas is not ranked anymore, so I guess from a national level. But that's why this game was set up, is because of how good Baylor's been and how good, frankly, Arkansas's been the last 2 years on a national stage. Arkansas can get back there again. That's not lost or gone. It's not out the window, but they've got work to do, and that's why you want to see these two performances. All right, let's talk recruiting a little bit. This is really about guys that have already signed. We've been talking about it of late, and the McDonald's All-American selections, the McDonald's All-American team game selections were announced earlier today during the broadcast of the NBA Today show. That's what they do every year. And on ESPN, and look, Arkansas had 2 5-star signees in the early period. And, I felt like one of them was a lock and the other one was right there and had a good shot at it. But one of the future Hogs made it. Bay Fall top 15. When you look at the national prospect rankings on the Rivals has him at 15. ESPN bumped him down to 19. But he's really, in my opinion, a top 15 guy. But a 5-star, 6'11" forward center at Accelerated Schools in Denver, Colorado. He made the West squad. So 24 players. Each team has 12 players. He's on the West squad. Layden Blocker, the 6'3" guard out of Little Rock, who's at Sunrise Christian Academy in Wichita, Kansas. This is the interesting part. Blocker's a 5-star. He's been a composite, which is an aggregate of the 3 top services. Blocker wasn't invited, correct? And so, he was composite number 25, which is a 5-star, and that's an aggregate of the services. So when you look at the services that factors in, it's ESPN, Rivals, and 247 Sports. But so he moved up 8 spots last week, and Rivals updated prospect rankings for 2023 to number 21. And so his composite actually moved. It moved from 25 to 22. But ESPN, which everybody knows is closely tied, their rankings are closely tied, almost identically tied to how the McDonald's game is going to be selected. And they dropped Blocker down on last Thursday or Friday when they updated their rankings from 21 to 26. And my stomach sunk when I saw that, because only 24 players make it. It's usually 22 or 23 of those of the top 24. You had a couple of players in that top 24 that didn't make it. One of those was Robert Dillingham, the top 15 guy that's an overtime elite, so he wasn't eligible. But there are some names, and I'm not going to call out kids, but there's 2 or 3 guys that were in there. I watch these guys in the spring and summer. I watch them through the season, even if I can't be there in person at that point. I'm watching live streams. I'm watching it on ESPN or wherever I get it. I live on this stuff, man. And there's 2 or 3 guys that easily Blocker has proven more, done more, and should have been in there ahead of. And it just, sometimes there's politics and how some of that to get watching. And so I'm not going to name names. Some of you that follow this stuff will know who 2 or 3 of these guys probably are without me saying it. It's a tough break, but that's life. Politics happens at every level in life, including when you're a kid. Sometimes it's not right, but you got to move on, and Layden Blocker will do that. He'll probably use this as fuel. And look, there's other All-Star games. We know that's the creme de la creme, the McDonald's game. There's the Jordan Brand Classic. There's Allen Iverson, the Iverson Classic. There's some other national games, and maybe he'll get invited to one of those. I hope he does. He deserves it. Again, coming in, going from 21 to 26 in ESPN's rankings just a few days ago I felt like that was going to make it a problem, but still held out hope they would. But anyway, the positive, Bay Fall's in. That's their fourth McDonald's All-American in the last two recruiting cycles. We already know Nick Smith Jr., Anthony Black, and Jordan Walsh were the McDonald's All-Americans last year. In fact, Black made his commitment announcement to Arkansas during those few days of the McDonald's All-American event, leading up to the actual game. So that was, that's really, when you look at recruiting right now for Arkansas, even though this isn't news that Arkansas has landed a 5-star, it helps the program because that's more exposure when Arkansas's name is going to be talked about when they talk about May Fall. McDonald's All-American games March 28th in Houston. So that's not too far off. It's a couple of months out, but you'll be able to see Bay Fall. He's having a really good season, accelerated prep. I thought he, in the article I wrote today about his McDonald's All-American selection, I liked his quote, naming some of the old school guys, man, Magic Johnson and some of those guys that came before him, and how, it's just amazing to him effectively that he's, getting to be doing something that those guys did as trendsetters. We know McDonald's All-American, Arkansas's had a rich history going back to the 90s under Nolan Richardson, really. Bobby Portis was the one for Mike Anderson, and we saw what he did to back up that McDonald's All-American nod. I mean, he was a top 15-ish 5-star coming out, SEC Player of the Year as a sophomore, second team All-American as a sophomore, first-round draft pick, and now he's one of the best bigs in the NBA, whether he plays off the bench or starts, one of only 11 averaging double-doubles. So we know what 5 stars meant for Arkansas, and to have 4 in the last 2 classes is a feather in Eric Musselman's cap as he continues to recruit. In Arkansas tonight, when I look at this performance, any players you're recruiting and they see that you've lost several games, you need to start showing them reasons why, you want to come to Arkansas and be part of something. And so is it too soon to say this team is now in full turnaround mode? Probably. Again, Ole Miss, LSU, bottom of the league, but it's still SEC teams with SEC talent. Yes, you were at home, but you won these games without having to fight till the end to win them. And we know in the past, Arkansas, win or lose, once they start winning, and there's fewer and fewer losses in between, not all of those games are just rolling with it. They've had to fight and gut it out and get to the finish line. And so that's what's going to really matter when it does get tighter. Great to get these double-digit wins, but once things start to get tight, we're going to keep an eye on that and see what Arkansas does. But again, the defensive effort after having some backslides on defense, we know that's where things really start for Arkansas. Blocker was on about, does ESPN have a bias against Arkansas, or do we overreact? Well, I don't know if it was against Arkansas. I just know that some of the players that moved up that are in this game are same position as him or similar positionally. And so, 2 years ago it was Moses Moody that got the snub. And, there's no doubt that, he showed after high school that they made a mistake. I mean, he was a lottery pick as a one and done, he was all SEC freshman of the year, all SEC first team. I think it was 1 or 2 votes from being the player of the year. He was the freshman of the year, the newcomer of the year, honorable mention All-American. I mean, everything he had done leading up to not making the McDonald's All-American team. Now, because of COVID, they didn't play it, but they still announced a team, and he didn't get it. Arkansas bias, whatever you want to call it. Last year, two Arkansas kids, made it. One Razorback, Nick Smith Jr., Khalil Ware was the other one. But those guys were so highly rated. I mean, it would have been criminal to leave out 2 top 10 guys, and Smith being really a top 3 guy. So I'm not calling it Arkansas bias. I'm just telling you they got it wrong, and I think they even know that. I think, again, they're trying to market this stuff. And if you go do any research on it, some of you folks that are tuning in already know what I'm talking about and who I'm talking about, at least one of them. But if you research it and pay attention, you'll be able to figure it out. So it is what it is. I mean, Leighton Blocker's not in it, but again, there's some other big all-star games. They're not on the level of McDonald's, but they're up there. Jordan Brand Classic's a really good one. The Iverson Classic, that's what Anthony Black played in that in addition to McDonald's. Nick Smith Jr. played in the Jordan Brand in addition to McDonald's. Jordan Brand also had Jordan Walsh, but he didn't play because he was dealing with an injury at the time. So those are still out there, and we'll see. we are the smallest market in the SEC. Well, maybe that's why Arkansas. I mean, it's not that there's a complete bias against Arkansas, and I know sometimes fans feel that way, but I do think when you look around any league, and I've seen it before, teams like Texas in the Big 12, maybe Oklahoma, some of the ones with more tradition or the bigger fan bases, whatever, it just seems like, calls and over time they get more of that stuff. And it happens in the SEC as well. So sometimes it's not just about a bias towards Arkansas, but a lifting up of teams that are supposed to be there. I do believe that happens. And, I think the Arkansas football game at Florida a few years ago when Tebow was, on a pedestal, that game was atrocious. That game was handed to Florida when Petrino was running things. And Arkansas, I thought, got royally screwed in that one. But there's been examples in a lot of sports. And it's not like Arkansas hasn't won some games off some questionable calls. But typically they're in the middle to back of the pack, and those things going their way. So there's other teams that I think get anointed. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because it sounds like whining and homerism, but I do think that way. But tonight, this is why in games like this, you don't leave it to chance. The Missouri game, I had a 10-point lead with just under 5 minutes to go. I thought the refs handcuffed Arkansas. No fouls on Arkansas's end. Missouri lives at the free throw line. It was the only way that team could win that game because the teams traded evenly with baskets. And so, yeah, that stuff can be frustrating, but you've got to move past it now. And I think if Arkansas can build on these last two wins and get on a bit of a run, again, the Baylor games, it's just free money, man. This is an opportunity to crush it for your resume. And if you lose, you're not crushed. You don't get crushed by it. And you get back into SEC play with A&M at home, and you got a chance now to pull within a game of 500 after starting 1-5. How big would that be? And if you add if you win two more here, including Baylor, now you're on a 4-game winning streak. Your resume is soaring again. I mean, Arkansas came into this game ranked number 27 in the net. That's not horrible. It's not where it was. They got up as high as 10 or 8 or somewhere there. But it's not horrible. And it's not unthinkable that they can climb back up. And some of the other analytics like Ken Palm and ESPN BPI had them closer to 20 than 25 in recent days. And so even though in some of these bracketologies 7 or 8 seed, they've got a chance to fix everybody's eyes by playing right, picking up wins, and moving back up in the pecking order. They're not too far down. And when you really look at it, outside of Alabama, Tennessee, and Auburn right now, I don't think there's any other SEC team other than maybe Kentucky that's jostling for the NCAA tournament. A&M's got a shot. We'll see how some of these things shake out. Missouri, A&M and Missouri maybe. But I don't think those guys will end up in as good a light as Arkansas. I think Arkansas is going to be just fine. I don't know that. We'll see. They got to go do it. But tonight was certainly a step in the right direction. All right, Hogvillenet YouTube Live. Glad you could join me. Hope you're having a good night. It was an early game, inclement weather in Northwest Arkansas, so I ended up not going. But you know what? That's okay because you get this game over early with tonight. You can enjoy the rest of your evening, whether you're watching, the post game or not. But again, I think the SEC Big 12 Challenge, this is the last one they're going to play. The SEC starts playing, competitively against the ACC for one of these events where teams match up going forward. We know the Big 12's not the Big 12 anymore once Texas and Oklahoma leave, regardless if they keep the name and who they had. That's really, to me, that's too many steps down the rungs to continue, playing that league like this. And it's been a really good basketball league. I'm not saying it's going to be awful, but it's just not going to be the same in any, when you look at sport to sport, and, they'll still have some competitive, solid play in basketball, but I just don't think it's the same league in terms of overall quality. But Arkansas at Baylor, I think, is a great way to end it. Arkansas has never won on the road in the SEC Big 12 Challenge or the Big 12 SEC Challenge, however you want to say it. And they've never lost at home, but they're playing on the road. So it'd be a great way to finish it, to get, to finish above 500 in the event by winning on the road. That'd be a big deal. Baylor's no joke. And it's a really good team. It's probably not as strong as it was in its national championship season. That should be obvious. But they're very good. And again, they knocked off Kansas. Kansas State beat Kansas a few days, last week, and now Baylor at home. But Baylor's got another home game with the Hogs. And so I think if Arkansas's defense travels, it gives itself a chance in that game. Baylor teams are typically not only play with poise and confidence, but they have an attacking style that I think is unique because they're relentless in how they attack. They really don't have – they can have bad stretches of games, but they don't really let up in their determination of going at you. And I think that's a rare – I think that's a rare great thing in college basketball these days because I see a lot of teams back off. Even if they want to be relentless or can do it for a while, they can't sustain it. Baylor does a good job of that. I do think Arkansas can win this game. I think they can beat anybody and most anybody on any given night at home. Neutral site, they did fine in the Big 12, in the Maui Invitational, even though they were only, at that time they had Trevor in Brazil. So this makeup of Arkansas, I think they can beat most anybody, but on the road, I won't go that far. But against Baylor, or against this particular Baylor team, if Arkansas plays defense like it did tonight and takes care of turnover battle again like it's done back-to-back games after being just awful through most of the first 6 SEC games, just awful. They've turned that around. If they can do those two things, defense and fix some of the turnovers, I think they give themselves a chance to stay in that game and maybe pull out a win at the end. We could also see backslide. They haven't been good on the road. There are times where they weren't competitive on the road, not long enough. I'd say the Missouri game this last time out was the best example of Arkansas maybe moving that needle because it wasn't as much their defense as the whistles. What was the deal with Muss and the microphone after the game? Yeah, he was fired up, man. He's fed up with officiating. Someone else said that. He is fed up with officiating. I think the game overall was called fine. I just think that was a flagrant one. It was obvious. And they go and look at replay. They can see the guy hold. I mean, do you have to see everything to know that it was a hold? He's got him on the other side of his hip by his jersey. You could see by Ricky Council's body reaction that he's being tugged on. He's trying to break away. And you see his jersey move back just a little bit, even if you can't fully see the hand. What else do you need to know? That was a flagrant one. He didn't make a play on the ball. He was behind him, and he grabbed him. It says if you hold or don't make a play on the ball, that's a flagrant one. Textbook definition. They didn't call it. So I think, some of the stuff that's been going on, this wasn't a game. This is back-to-back games where it wasn't a free throw fest. LSU took 16, the Hogs took 12. So LSU got the benefit at the line, that's for sure. Early in the game, I thought Arkansas was fouling. As good as its defense was, it didn't close possessions. It fouled some. And I think LSU was 7-9 at the line when Arkansas led 15-11 right before that big 23-3 run to finish the half. So they'd already shot 9 free throws and made 7. So the rest of the game, after that early stretch, LSU only shot 5 more free throws. So Arkansas's defense got much, much better without fouling, I thought. And we know the early part of the second half, they were a little flat-footed. I thought their transition defense stunk for a few minutes there. LSU was running out. I thought there were just some breakdowns there, and I didn't think Arkansas was as locked in. A little nonchalant. You're not good enough no matter how good your first half was. You've got to bring it horn to horn. I thought, Arkansas did for the most part, and they finished right. They certainly finished right. They won going away, and they won by 20. But, that's something they can work on. Did we expect perfection after all of this that's played out in the last few weeks? So, I'll give them some credit there. I'm going to go back and salute Devo Davis. I thought he got the team off on a great start. Had a couple of rough patches early to start second half, and then he rolled with it again when Arkansas, stepped on LSU's throat to win this like it did. 60-40. I mean, a college team getting to 40 points, and that's it. One other thing I'll mention, you guys noticed Justice Hill didn't play tonight. I think it was the third game he's missed with LSU. He started most of the season, but he's left for personal reasons. He stepped away from the team. Don't know if it's permanent. Don't know if he has plans to come back. But anyone wondering why he wasn't in the game or available or on the bench, so he's away from the program right now. So we'll see what happens with that. I think too, when I look at this LSU team, we talked about Miller and Arkansas really keeping him in check. We talked about the big man Williams. I didn't bring up Hannibal, the senior, the transfer from South Carolina that just killed Arkansas down in Baton Rouge. He got to the basket going left and right, and Arkansas couldn't stop him. If you notice tonight, now he did finish with 8 points, but 4 of 10 field goals, not near the impact he had in the first game. And he really had a hard time getting a clear path to the basket. Arkansas did a good job, even if he got as deep as 5 or 6 feet in front of the basket, of walling him off, not giving him an angle to get all the way to the backboard to lay it in. And then he had a tree he had to try to shoot over. And part of that was, Mekhi Mitchell, Kamani Johnson at times, and even Jalen Graham. So Arkansas did a good job of restricting Hannibal's freedom to get all the way to the basket. And so I thought, that was another big key defensively. Sometimes when you look at numbers on defense, percentages, shooting, score, keeping the score down, all that, what goes into that? And what did you do this time that was different than last time when LSU won 60-57? You held them to 20 fewer points. And part of those things we just talked about, and that's Eric Musselman. He's going to game plan and scheme to take things away. All right, go to Hogville.net for our written content. I'm going to go work on this game story and polish it up with must quotes and player quotes and other details. This is Hogvillenet YouTube Live. I join you every post game after every game. It's always better when Arkansas wins, back-to-back wins. It's even better and sweeter. When we do this on Saturday, that game starts at 3 at Baylor down in Waco, and so it should be over 5:30. I'll probably be coming on around 5:30ish. And if Arkansas wins that game, we can start talking in terms of the turnaround. It's deja vu. It's it's a trifecta in the making, because if Arkansas goes down and wins on the road, picks up its first road win of the season against that team, then I think we can start talking about here we go again. And you always want to see it because Eric Musselman's punching things up. He's still trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not. And this time so far, I don't think he's quite gotten to a point of deciding on a rotation tweak. And I think it's more of a read it as it goes situation. I don't think there's a permanent rotation tweak in the near future necessarily. I think it's more about, is it Joseph Penny in this matchup? Is that I put him in? Is that working? And tonight? It was Jalen Graham. It's been Mekhi Mitchell the previous 3 games, but he was out tonight. He may be out for a minute. I don't expect him to be back for Baylor. We'll see with that ankle injury in the previous game. But it's just been, guys stepping up at different times. Jordan Walsh had great back-to-back games, 13 minutes and fouled out, even though he was perfect from the field against Missouri. Played 40 minutes and stayed out of foul trouble in the last game and had a nice game. Not as much of an impact from him tonight as far as offense. But you saw, like I said, other guys. And so I don't think, obviously he's not falling out of the rotation. But the point is, I think Musselman's doing it on the fly more so right now than maybe in previous seasons when things started to turn around. And that could change. And I think a big thing that could change all of this talk is obviously a Nick Smith Jr. coming back into your life. Again, we're not there yet. We don't know if we'll get there. But if that does happen, I think things change immensely in the right way for this team because of all that he does as an offensive threat. Shoots the threes, can score anywhere inside the arc to the basket, can get to the free throw line, does that in volume. He's an 80+% free throw shooter. He's a gifted passer who's going to set other guys up. And it just changes things when you have that kind of dynamic. Because we know Arkansas still struggles from 3. Even though tonight they made their first 4, the smart thing to do was keep them down, keep them under 13 attempts. 38.5% from 3. They're getting better from the 3 line. They were 40% in their previous 3 games. One of the things I wrote about in that article this week, that they were, right at 40% in their last 3 games. And then you add 38+% tonight. That's really good for this team, and keeping the temps down was really good. But again, if you get a Nick Smith Jr. back, it opens up so much for this team. And let's leave the what ifs alone for now because there's 2 big games coming up before we get out of January. Again, I talked about it. Baylor on the road in the final Big 12 SEC Challenge. A&M at home next week. A&M started 5-0 in the league, lost at Kentucky. Arkansas can win that game, and you got to think right now with Arkansas protecting home court as well as it has outside of that Bama loss, that the Hogs will find a way to do that again, win or lose at Baylor. And so right now there's a lot to be positive about. I know fans want to get some revenge on Baylor. We'll see what happens, but the big game really is the next one, in my opinion, because you really need to beat A&M at home to give yourself a really good launching pad for the second half of league play when you might get a Nick Smith Jr. back. So everything's still on the table for this team. I know everybody was discouraged. I don't want to sound preachy or tell you how to think. Arkansas's not out of the woods. Ole Miss and LSU are buried deep in the woods. So good timing to get them on the schedule at home right now after that start. But let's see what Arkansas does moving forward. But you got to like the way Arkansas played for most of this game. In the second half of the Ole Miss game, I think when you run all that together, this is about as good as Arkansas has looked since before. You had to go back to parts of Maui and maybe that Oklahoma game, and Bradley. That was mid-major, but Arkansas really ran that team out of the gym. But it's been a while since Arkansas's put together any kind of one game to the next game looking good, and back-to-back wins for the first time in over a month, back-to-back league wins, and you win them by double-digit margins. It's positive right now, Hog fans. All right, signing off. Thank you for joining me on Hogvillenet YouTube Live. Arkansas Razorbacks defeat LSU Tigers at Bud Walton Arena in pink tonight, 60-40. See you next time.